Okay, I'm going to show you how to draw a Bohr diagram. So what is a Bohr diagram? So a Bohr diagram looks something like this, and why we use it is so that we can show what roughly what an atom looks like. So we write it like this. It's called a Bohr diagram. And what it shows us is how many protons, neutrons, and electrons are in an atom. So our first step is to determine the number of protons and neutrons, and we're going to write a circle. I'm writing them in a circle that represents the nucleus of the atom. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. So we'll draw a circle, and let's say we're drawing aluminum. So we have to look at our periodic table, find aluminum, which is Al. Aluminum has an atomic number of 13, so we know that that's the number of protons. So we're going to write 13p. Then we need to figure out how many neutrons. So we have to look at our atomic mass, which is 26.98, which we know we need to round, so we're going to round it to 27. We're going to take 27. So if you remember, in order to find the number of neutrons equals the atomic mass rounded divided by the atomic number. So we've got 27 for our atomic mass. We're going to subtract our atomic number, which is 13. 27 minus 13 is 14. So we're going to write 14N. Okay, so this represents the nucleus of our atom. Step 2 is to determine the number of electrons. So if you remember, we said that the number of electrons equals the number of protons. So we have 13 protons, we're going to have 13 electrons. The last step in the process is to place the electrons in the appropriate shells until they're all accounted for. So how do we do this? So the first shell always holds 2 electrons. Okay? That's the shell that's closest to the nucleus. Our second shell holds 8 electrons. Okay? Always holds 8. And then the third shell also holds 8 electrons for the first few periods, but we're not going to get into that because that's more complicated chemistry. So for our intensive purposes, the second shell and the third shell both hold 8 electrons. Our first shell holds 2 electrons. So the first step that we're going to do, we're going to draw our first shell. Okay? We're going to draw 2 electrons. And generally speaking, you draw them on opposite sides of the shell. Okay. So we know that we have 13 total. We've now used 2 because we've placed 2 electrons. So we have 11 electrons left to work with. So we're now going to draw the second shell. And remember, our second shell holds 8 electrons. So we've got 11 is more than 8. So we know that we're going to fill that second shell with 8 electrons. So let's go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Remember that each one of these has a negative charge. I could write right in here, negative, 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 negative. That helps you to remember that they each have a negative charge. All right, so now we've placed 8 electrons. So we're going to take 11, we're going to subtract 8. We have 3 left to place. So we're going to draw that third shell, and we're going to place our last 3 electrons. Okay, now what I want you to remember is that this shell has room for 5 more electrons. So this atom right now is you can think of it as kind of like it's lonely. So it's going to be looking for something, for an atom that has 5 electrons to bond with it. Okay? And then what will happen is that they'll fill the shell. Okay? So what I want you to do is to create a Bohr diagram, show all your mass, or all your calculations, so remember that this is the atomic mass, this is the atomic number, this is the number of neutrons. Right, and we did aluminum. So what I want you to do is to create a Bohr diagram for chlorine and bring it with you to class tomorrow, because we're going to look at them and see how they came out.